Thank you so much, Warren, for coming on to another episode of CEO Chats. In case anyone didn't know, Warren is my PR agent and has so much valuable information to offer anybody trying to either get in public relations or seeking a PR agent. I started working with Warren 2 months ago, and everything from that point has been a literal transition from taking me to one point to another. Warren is a part of my team. I appreciate him so much. He is someone that has come on and not only offered amazing advice, but is invested in my growth. So I'm super excited to introduce to you guys Warren, my publicist. Warren, hey, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. How about you, Nicole? It's my honor. I can't, to wake up to such a beautiful introduction is just amazing. But, it's really my honor to be representing somebody of your level of achievement and everything that you've done in your life. I'm just here to tell the story.
Thank you so much. That means the world, and I really do think, when someone like me, it took a village for my mom to get with me this far. She really invested in me. And now that I have someone like you on my team, I wanted to share that with people. I don't want people to think that, I'm out here doing this all by myself. You actually are the one that came up with the idea of the Zoom chats. So I had to get you on here, of course, because you are just so intelligent and so helpful to my growth. And I wanted to introduce everybody to you. And one of the first questions I had was how you got started, and just if you could tell people a little bit about you.
Yes, ma'am. So how I got started in public relations is kind of a crazy story. So I was a childhood actor. So I was on the entertainment side of things and being in the public eye for quite some time. I was a child actor. I started acting at probably about 5 or 6 years old. My first movie role was actually with Eddie Murphy, and Robert Townsend gave me my first opportunity. So I learned a lot in that venture of my life. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to use that experience, some of the connections that I made and what I learned, both positive and negative, to help others. And so I said, I went back to school because school was really important to my parents. And I wanted to try to help others. So basically, I hooked up with an old friend who was an author at the time. And she was trying to figure out she wanted to get her book out and didn't know anything about anything. So we kind of collaborated, and I was able to pull a few connections, get her on some news outlets, get her story out there. And, it just ventured off from there. I've been in public relations for about 10 years now. I'm 8 solid, and I just love giving people that smile on their face when their hard work comes to fruition. And it's really hard out here sometimes, especially if you don't know where to start, who to go to, and how to manage those, the budget, because everything is expensive out here as well. So managing time and budget and just not getting discouraged because there's so many people out here trying to do the same thing as you. So just trying to help people fulfill their dream is what I try to do.
A question that I have for you is, someone like me, I feel like people would look at me like, why did you have a PR agent? You know what I mean? Like someone like a small name, I feel like people would think I'm not there yet, but I actually love having a PR agent because it's really helpful to my growth and as I'm trying to get there. We're a team and we work together, but how do you turn a small name client into a big name client?
Okay, so it is definitely all about cultivating a marketable story. So finding a niche. Some people think they need a PR agent and they really don't. Because they have to kind of craft what they're trying to market first. When you're coming to me, I can help you, but I'm not, how should I say this? I'm not a person that can make things happen for you. So you kind of have to have a solid base of what you're trying to accomplish first, and then we can kind of grow from there. But with you, I wouldn't consider you a small name. Now, I understand what you're saying as far as notoriety, but what you have accomplished is definitely a marketable story because you're in a situation where you can help our youth and teach them, which is much needed in our society, how to cultivate wealth, what you did, what worked for you, and you have validity behind your story. So you put in the time, and even though you're young, these few years, I guess I should say, and a lot of people want to know about that. So it's about looking at what your niche is and your knowledge base, your ability, and just getting some visibility and eyes to that. So branding you in a way that is newsworthy, is story-worthy, and grabbing I would say an audience, basically, knowing what your audience is and kind of growing from that.
You know, getting a small name client to a big name client, you said you have to have a story. And how do you use that story to accomplish what you need to do?
Okay, so as PR agents, we have to kind of stay attuned to what's going on, what are hot topics, what do people want to hear, and learning you. So a lot of times, you know, I'll take a month or two and just really, really get to learn who my client is. Because a lot of times the client don't even know who their audience is. You know, they haven't taken the time to go in and look at the analytics, look at the demographics, look at the age groups, men versus women, international versus local. Oh, I have a big following in New York, but nobody really knows me in California. So kind of strategically doing a plan to say, okay, how do I want to grow and where do I want to grow? Mm-hmm. And using that knowledge base to reach out to, and again, it may not be huge outlets all the time. You know, I'm also very, very transparent. And I think any good publicist should be very transparent with their clients to set a realistic expectation and a realistic timeline of what to expect. You don't want to sell a dream and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to get you on CNN tomorrow. I'm going to get you on The Breakfast Club tomorrow, or, you know, The Real, whatever it is, because it takes time to do that. And sometimes, you know, it may be smaller outlets, but you have to understand that eyes are eyes, and you never know who in those outlets or who in those channels are going to resonate with your storyline, and thereby they also have connections. So you're building a brand little by little by little, and you're growing. And not to get discouraged. That's the biggest thing, because it does take time. And even though you know, the internet and social media wants to make you think that people have blown up overnight, and it does happen. It's very rare. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, there's a lot of work in those back channels before that blow up or before that viral moment happens.
I'm not going to become a celebrity.
Go ahead.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, you know, you might be different because you're just so intelligent. And your personality and everything about you. Look at you. It's your smile now. Like you're just selling with all facets. So you might be one of those exceptions, but I'm just saying this for your audience out there that, you know, when they're looking for somebody, to make sure that they have that means of communication and make sure that they have a realistic expectation of, you know, where they can go and how to get there.
Your industry, I don't know how you feel about clients, you know, sometimes that expect a lot more in such a short period of time, and not to be considered like a myth. Are there any other myths that you could share with us, and some experiences that you could share with us that you have?
Well, I think the biggest myth about PR agents is us making miracles happen to some extent. And what I mean by that is, you know, even though we have decided to, you know, help cultivate our clients' businesses, dreams, and things like that, and help them grow as entrepreneurs, we still have people we have to, you know, work with as well. So it's not like, even though I have relationships, because being a PR agent is all about relationships. And a lot of times, some clients really, you know, they're connected themselves, but what the PR agent does is it formalizes, and it also frees up things where the PR agent can do a lot of the back channel things that they would not have to do. But we still have to work with journalists. We still have to call producers, and, you know, they have jobs too. So it's not like just because we know somebody that we can automatically snap our fingers and get you on TV or get you a write-up in this publication. They still have to get approved as well. So we get a lot of no's. And even some of the best, biggest PR agents out there, you know, you look at it and like, oh my God, they're doing so much and their clients are doing this and that, but you don't know how many no's it took to get that, you know, that one big outlet, or how many months they had to wait to get a response for an email. So, you know, it definitely can be cumbersome, but again, it's all about staying focused and also being on the same page and chord. Because sometimes, you know, it's circling back to that same outlet that told you no 5 times, but this now is the right time, because sometimes your storyline may be a great storyline, but it may not fit to what they're pushing right now. For example, we had months of, people who had great stories, but they weren't able to get a lot of press because what was the predominant story? It was COVID. So if you didn't have a story relative to something COVID, then it was hard at that particular point in time to get a lot of press because you weren't at that hot topic. But what you also can do is trying to change the narrative. For somebody like you, for example. So say we wanted to push your story during the time of COVID, right? And we're working on something now. I'm not going to, share it with the audience, but I think it's going to be something, fingers crossed, it's going to be something great. But to try to find a way to pivot, we're trying to push relevant to the hot topic right now that all the news stations, all the journalists are writing about. So let's try to do it this way. Let's take your story and let's hook up with a couple of people that have gone through COVID and maybe you interviewed them and got their story of how they transitioned from a time of not being able to be social to now being able to be back or maybe laid off. So being able to kind of align those stories to make them relevant and make them newsworthy.
When should people start looking for a PR agent? I think you touched upon it a little bit when you said, when you have your story together, but is there anything else that you wanted to add? Like if for people looking at this now and it's like, I want to work with you, like what should they have right now?
Okay, that is a great, great question. And I'm so glad that you asked that, Nicole. I think the biggest thing is to make sure, and it's not even about following or how well you're known or anything like that. It's basically having a marketable skill. Okay, whether that's being an author that just published a book, whether that's being, okay, I'm a artist and I just dropped an LP and I have a video and I want to try to get some more eyes on it. Whether it be, I just opened this brand new, restaurant and nobody really knows about it. So we need to have a plan to get some, some eyes and some relevant people in there, but something that is marketable. Because there's a big difference and people also misconstrue the difference between a publicist, a manager, a booking agent. All these things are so closely aligned, but their jobs are very, very, very different. A publicist's job is to basically get you visibility and control your public relations aspect. So whether that means, okay, I'm going on this TV show and I'm an author, so I want to look a certain way. So as a publicist, I want to make sure that you look the part. We go over talking points so that you're prepared so that when you go on there, people are looking at, because everybody's so judgmental. So when you're in the public eye all the time, every little thing and every decision that you make is relevant to your brand, and make sure all your brands align. Everything should be the same. It should be consistent. I shouldn't get a different Nicole here, here, and here, because people start to gravitate to who you are as a brand. So I think the biggest thing for a publicist is making sure that you have a marketable skill that you're trying to publicize. Not just saying, I want to be seen. Okay, you want to be seen, but what do you do? If I was to go and have a conversation with my producer friend over at Fox tomorrow and say, hey, I want to get Nicole on a segment in the morning on Good Day DC. What's your knowledge base? What are you talking about? Why would they want to have you on?
Yeah, that's relevant to what they're doing and what they're talking about.
Exactly.
What are the advantages of having a PR agent? It's like one of my last questions, and I just want to wrap it up with, I would say like 3 key pieces.
Okay. So the first and foremost is, again, time, because the PR agent is there to do a lot of the grunt work that you don't have to do. Okay. Number 2 is relationships. In this society, it's all about relationships, period. It's not even, even having a degree is not as powerful as having relationships nowadays. So what you're doing is you're paying for that PR agent's relationships and the time that they've invested in getting to know these people that have the power to get your story out there to the audience that you need to get it to. And the third thing, to help you maybe look and craft your story from a different vantage point that maybe you didn't even see. So sometimes, when you're talking and when you're looking at yourself, first of all, most people are the biggest critics of themselves, right? So, you may have a certain storyline and say, I want to do this a certain way. But when you're sitting down with a PR agent who is actually a professional in the industry and knows how to kind of pivot, they may see a lot of things that are advantageous to your career and your advancement that you didn't even think about. So having somebody else on your team, kind of like a second set of eyes or a second brain to say, okay, you know what? You look at it this way, but did you see it this way? Did you see it this way? We can hit it from so many different vantage points and still accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
So those are the biggest three things that I think are advantages of having a PR agent.
Yeah, I agree because, my industry is real estate. But as I'm trying to grow my brand, because that's what we're doing together, we're growing the brand. And as I'm trying to get more information out there within my community, one of the things that I've realized is that like your point of view is just so different from mine. And it's so valuable. And so, as opposed to if I was talking to, the media specialist on a news article by myself, I wouldn't be able to hit certain points that you could just think of on the top. Like this is your specialty. And like having someone who specializes in something, who's in your corner, who has your back, who has your best interest, who, knows how to characterize and package things well is a huge advantage as opposed to having someone who, as opposed to doing it yourself. And it's just like a lot to think about by yourself when you're doing these other things as a business owner. And it's not just about, I'm in real estate, but like you said, if you have a restaurant, like you said, if you're a model or if you have like all these other, this is different industries, like your job transcends just, one industry. And, I want to say thank you for helping me get as far as I've gotten because we've only been together for 2 months, but a lot of people who have been watching and following my blog and following my YouTube and my podcast will see that there's been some changes, and a huge part of that has been for you and your advice and what you've been telling me. And I've been taking it as much as I can. So I want people to know that, again, it takes a village. It's not just me behind the scenes. It's also Warren. And I'm so happy that I could introduce you to, the people behind this screen. So thank you so much for taking the time out today to interview
Not
me.
a problem. And you're such an amazing person. I'm just, so excited to see, where we are in the next 6 months because, the sky is the limit for you, girl. It really, really, really is.
I appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming on. And we're just going to stop it right there. I think that's perfect.
All right, girl. Enjoy the rest of your vacay. Thank you.
Thank you.